Are you growing your beard on purpose, or is that just a byproduct?
Am I growing my beard on purpose, or am I not shaving my beard on purpose? Welcome to episode 345 of the Design Details Podcast. I'm Brian Levin.
And I'm Marshall Bach. Welcome back for another episode. Brian, sequential numerical episode one this time.
I love it.
3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I look at the clock a lot of times when it's 12:34. And I'm like, every time I look at the clock, I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you do that?
Nope. But
Okay.
now I will.
Yeah.
No, it's nice. It doesn't fit anywhere on our grid or on like a computer, base 8 system.
Sure.
So it's not that great, but in terms of, I guess, sequentially, it's nice.
Yeah.
Because the next one will be what? 4, 5, 6.
4, 5. Yeah, they're rare, right? Like it doesn't come very often.
2 years away. Yeah.
Celebrate it while it's here. Anyways, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. We got a lot to get into today, and then it's the Westworld finale tonight. So we can.
Yeah. And Dave just had a finale too. Did you watch the finale of that?
No, but I heard it was good, but I'm not caught up yet.
It's very good.
Yeah?
Man, as a slight bit of follow-up, just as a tangent, we mentioned Dave before. It's a very good show. It's over now, and I've seen all the episodes. I can attest that, yes, it is a very good show that you should watch.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, I think I'm maybe halfway through, I suppose, but I'll catch up.
Please.
All right, so let's get into it. We have a Golden Ratio supporter on Patreon. So huge thank you to Float this week. Float is an easy-to-use resource management tool for planning your projects and scheduling your team's time. It's built by creatives for creatives, and it makes resource planning really simple. You can learn more at float.com/design details. We also have some new very important pixels this week. But first, Marshall, we hit a milestone this week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we crossed 200 VIPs.
Right, yeah.
Which is crazy. Like 200 is a lot of people now. Because like we were always worried recording bonus episodes and now bonus segments. Like, oh, we're doing all this stuff and like not many people will get to hear it. So we wanted to like keep pushing the best stuff to the main show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now 200 people, it's like, okay, cool. There's like a cool little sub-audience here of people who are supporting the show. So anyways, thank you to the new people this week. Thank you to Divya Talk.
Long time.
Yeah, long-time tweeter, first-time subscriber.
Thank you.
Welcome to the fam. Ugo Chukwu Ifezu. Hope I got that. Sarah Zhang, Joey Banks, Najat Oral, Kyler Phillips, Jamin Desai, Sophia Pang, Q.
Just the letter Q.
I think this is James Bond's assistant.
Yeah. Where's the goodies?
ESC.
Like the key.
Like the key, all caps. ESC, I know this person's name because I see their email when they subscribe in Patreon, but their display name on Patreon is just ESC. So that's what we're going to say.
Maybe that's their initials, and that's some pretty badass initials to have. Your initials are Escape. That's fucking rad.
Yeah, it's awesome. So thank you, Escape. Steve Clark, Susie Tsui, and Simon Toronto.
Thank you, everyone. That's a lot of VIPs this week, Brian.
Big week. I wonder if it's because of the sidebar, because this is more than normal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's working. Tell us if this is working. If you subscribed because you wanted to hear the sidebar, let us know. That like it's still for me in the experimental phase. We want to know if the bonus segment is enough to, make people feel good about supporting the show.
Yep.
If you didn't know, we are a listener-supported podcast, and every week we have a special bonus segment of the episode called The Sidebar.
Sidebar.
And the sidebar is where we share a story or an anecdote or pro tip or a little hack, just something design-related that we think people will enjoy each week. So this week, we talked about building small hacks and automations for yourself, little software for yourself. If you want to listen to this and other future bonus segments of the sidebar in upcoming episodes, go to patreon.com/design details. For just $1 a month, you get access to the sidebar.
Sidebar.
All right, let's get into some follow-up.
Yeah, so this first one is a DM we got from listener Sam Bazzalo. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, Sam. But in short, he says that he agrees with our points from episode 344, the last episode, where we're talking about showing evidence from users to make a bulletproof argument and prove your point and move away from opinions. And So he has a great example of how he encountered this problem at a previous role, and he gathered all of the user data to prove his point and presented it to the product owners and changed their minds. Go figure. He showed a video of users having a ton of frustration using the fucking thing and rage clicking. And that's enough to persuade people like, hey, maybe your product isn't built perfectly. We should maybe fix this. So he has a link to a case study that we'll include in the show notes where you can read up on that. But really cool. Thanks for sending that in, Sam.
Yeah, I love this. I think this was kind of our final point in the episode, right? Like, get out of opinion land and into user research data land as quickly as possible. And like being able to show people being frustrated is the most valuable ammunition you have when it comes to winning an argument like this.
Mm-hmm.
So nicely done, Sam.
Yep.
All right. We also had a little more follow-up from last week. We heard from Divya Talk, new very important pixel, who says, from today's episode, one of the things that my friend uses in her team is asking, when debating on an issue, if it's a 10, 100, or 1,000 point issue. That makes sure no one's arguing just for arguing or getting caught up. Basically, adding numbers to the sliding scale of fucks to give. So yeah, I like that. Just figure out how much people actually care about these little fights that you're getting in or disagreements.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the points that engineers assign to a task, right? Following what's that numerical sequence where it's you add the next number to the previous number? Fibonacci sequence. There you go. Yeah.
All right. We also heard from Carl, who is the question asker from last week. This doesn't happen very often if you haven't noticed this, Marshall.
Yeah.
But people ask questions, and we got a little follow-up. So Carl says, thanks for answering my question. The final point was super helpful because it perfectly represents the situation I'm in. Startup land with minimal resources. I have a habit of fighting every fight, so I better run down some of those hills fast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Glad that we were able to answer your question eventually. We got to it by the last point.
Yeah, well, good luck. Startups are hard. Pick your fights. Everything will be fine. Okay, we also have, I guess this will be like ongoing follow-up because we're getting some straggler people who are sharing their early shameful work from their portfolio, which is great. So we heard from Jacob Lindstrom, who says, I don't know if this qualifies as early work, but my old blog is still online. This is where it all started and got me into designing web pages. We have a link to, this is a blog.
Oh boy.
Blog with a sidebar, and this is like very mid 2000s style. It's like it's hosted on blogspot.com, which is like a mid 2000s website, or maybe late 2000s. Anyways, looks like a blog, and it looks like the last post was on 17th of December 2009. Oh yeah, so there you go. But yeah, I totally resonate with this. I got my start on WordPress, and WordPress was like my whole entry point into design. Right? I was like, okay, there's this template, but I want it to do this thing slightly different, or I want it to look slightly better, or I want to organize it in a slightly different way. And that was how I got interested in like making websites, and then eventually thinking about product. Like, okay, how are people consuming this? How's it organized? Are people like able to find things that they need? Is search working? Is the information architecture correct? Like, that was my rabbit hole.
Yeah, I feel like the first time I got into really customizing web pages was MySpace, where I was like editing HTML and trying to make it look, all the colors and type styles and everything that I wanted. Bringing me back, Brian, taking me back.
Yeah, that internet doesn't exist anymore, huh?
Nope, probably for the best.
Yeah, maybe. It was fun though. All right, well, let's follow up. We have one tweet this week from Jared Lodwick, who just tweeted a nice photo of the Design Details t-shirt, which at this point is years old. Yeah. Jared said, after wearing this almost weekly for like 4 years, I'm retiring this Design Details FM shirt into the apparel section of my cool tech swag collection, sealed away for safekeeping for future generations. Oh.
Preserved for posterity.
I probably wouldn't have been offended if he said, I'm going to like retire it to use as a dust rag or something. That would also be cool, right? Like you wore it so much to the point that it's not wearable anymore. So you're still finding ways to get utility from it. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, they're super comfy shirts. Like the material that you used is like stretchy and soft and comfy.
Yeah. We can try and bring those back. I
This is
did
a
start
good
poking at
segue,
apparel.
Brian. What about swag?
Know.
How's that coming along, buddy? Actually, I can say that you have sent me mock-ups of what some swag can look like, and we've had discussions on designs of things. But what about the actual sourcing?
It's just a lot of work. We'll probably go the Cotton Bureau route again because we can't be responsible for shipping and printing and all that kind of stuff. It's just a matter of design. Like we could do the same design, which is our logo on different colored t-shirts, which I wouldn't mind because I only have one. I have a black one, I think. But I would like different colors. But I don't know. I just am not a great graphic designer. So like anything I come up with from a logo branding graphic perspective just feels shitty. And I don't want to make something that is shitty, you know?
Yeah.
I think even if we just did like the current logo on a hoodie or something, that would even be satisfying on its own, right? Like, okay, same design, but like a new article to wear it in different temperatures. So,
do you just want to satisfy Brian, or do you want to surprise and delight?
At this point, satisfaction would be just fine.
That's true. Yeah. I guess meeting the lowest bar possible is good at this point.
Yeah.
Well, forward motion on that, and we'll keep you up to date, listeners.
All right, let's get into our main topic. We have a listener question from Tiffany CU who says, "Hey there, wanted to thank you for the podcast. It's been super helpful.
You're welcome.
I also wanted to share that doing a talk on developing taste would be great. You guys talked about it in a recent episode. So developing taste. Marshall, this has come up maybe once or twice now, but we like paused on doing it. I think neither of us were really sure. I'm still not sure of the science or research behind this, but we should just have a conversation about what it means to have taste and can you develop taste? And if so, how do you go about developing taste?
Yeah. Full disclosure, Brian, we actually did have a conversation about this, but it was part of an episode that was so long already that I cut it, partially because it didn't fit into the episode, partially because it was kind of a weird little side tangent. But
right.
Okay, let's talk about it for real. And the interesting thing is, my opinion back then is different from my opinion now. It's evolved since then. So
Is it worth saying what your opinion then was, and then we can compare it to what you have today?
So part of the reason that I cut it out is we kind of fought a little bit. You're like, you were of the opinion that taste is a thing that could be learned and taught. And I was of the opinion that taste is a thing that was kind of inherent, or at least innate, right? And since then, I've thought about it a lot because you were very vehement about being like, no, you can learn taste. And like, nah, man, you gotta have taste. And now I kind of think that yes, the taste is something you can develop. It is like a skill. You can get better at it, and you can understand why some things are better.
What changed your mind?
Well, okay. So, I should maybe say why I thought what I thought before.
Yeah, sure.
Which was when you think about people who really push forward a medium, right? When you think about the innovators, when you think about those who think outside of the box, Brian, they are not using an example of what is known to be the right way to do it, right? Like people who have taste like this stuff, and here's why they like this stuff. But those who create the new things aren't working off of any existing framework of what's the right way to do it. They create it, and the way they're able to create it and have it be recognized as good is because they have taste. And sometimes it's not recognized for a long, long time that what they've done has been good. Like look at your Van Goghs or any other artist who was starving while they were alive, and their painting's worth millions now. So how do you account for that? You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I was coming at it from before, but I'm willing to admit it's not only an inherent trait.
Well, okay, this is an interesting distinction. Like, I think taste can be learned, but I'm not convinced that taste can be taught. Like, I don't think you could go to Taste 101 at some art school or design school. But I feel like through the process of living life and experiencing the world and making things, you develop taste. I can look back on my early work and point to specific things and be like, I clearly had no taste. Like this wasn't going anywhere. I picked bad things. But over the years, I've made more stuff. I've been exposed to more ideas. I've had enough critiques with other people that now I'm able to contrast that with what I know. Therefore, I think I have more taste today than I did 10 years ago. Therefore, something happened in between there where I learned or developed that taste, right? Maybe not specifically somebody sitting down with me and saying, here is how to have taste. But I feel like, even just to bring close to home, like part of the process of you and me critiquing each other's work or critiquing other people's work has helped me. It's like added a new lens onto things, right? Like hearing the way you talk about products and software and thinking about visuals and consistency and alignment. And like we talk about all these different kinds of things. And that is a lens that lends itself to having taste in a thing.
Okay.
So do you think that it can be taught, or do you think that it can be learned?
Well, I guess you teach yourself, right? Which is learning. I don't know. Words are hard, but
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, maybe you can't teach it. I don't know. I've changed my opinion so much over the past couple months about this that.
Well, then we can dig into you and where do you think you got your taste? Like, if you can look back, are there moments where there's like a before and after of the way you perceive the world or think about what is good and bad?
Well, maybe first we can define taste so that we're both speaking the same language here.
Okay, sure.
Define taste for me, Brian.
Okay, let me think about this for a second. Taste is a value judgment of goodness or badness. Are you Googling it?
Yes, I am.
All right, well, that was my non-Google hypothesis. What does Google tell us that taste really means?
Well, I'm at the Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy here, and it says taste has been variously understood as 1, the capacity to take pleasure in certain artistic and natural objects, 2, the capacity to identify the constituent elements in such objects, and 3, the capacity to discern certain special properties. So, does this help at all?
Yeah, I feel like you can be taught like the vocabulary, or you could be taught things to look out for. And I think this is where design is certainly useful, because design is hopefully solving different kinds of problems. So you could approach taste from that point of view, like, oh, this is good because it's considered in the way that it would be held, or the way that it would be placed on a surface, or the way it would reflect light in certain ways. Like those might all lend itself to the ultimate evaluation of an object. But I feel like there's a part of that in there, which is you only can start to discern what is special when you have a wide enough range of experiences in the world. This is really dumb, but I'll bring it back. But the example that I used in the segment that you cut a few episodes ago was this idea of kitchen drawers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you grow up in a house that just has normal kitchen drawers, like your whole mental model of what a kitchen drawer could be is fixed. Like
limited.
It is a thing that just opens and closes. Maybe it has different shaped handles, but it just opens and closes. And then as you start to have more experiences in the world, you come across different kinds of kitchen drawers. You come across kinds that perhaps there's like a light inside that turns on when you open it, or kitchen drawers where you don't have to close it all the way. You let go and the hinge sort of pulls it back in. What's that called?
Soft close.
Soft close.
Yeah.
It's only through exposure to more things like that that you realize what's possible in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And not that knowing what's possible is the prerequisite of taste, because I think, we're kind of getting on the boundary here of like, how do you push that forward?
Yeah.
But anyways, I feel like there is just a baseline like vocabulary and dictionary that you just have to learn over time through experience. And that can still lend itself to learning what is tasteful, or learning why certain things are more special than other things.
Yeah. So I think this definition is interesting because it identifies a part that I haven't really thought about before, which is like, in order to have taste, you have to be able to derive pleasure from a thing that isn't inherently pleasureful, right? Like, I don't know. That was a thing that I hadn't really identified, but I think it's interesting that it's called out here.
Yeah.
Does that ring true for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that certainly comes into play when we talk about the art part of this, because there are like art curators and art collectors who can look at a painting and say that's good or that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this is leading me down this path of like, okay, you can have different kinds of tastes in different things, because I don't have any sort of taste for art. Like I go to an art museum and I'm like a 99%, I don't get what the fuck this is. And I think that's totally just me being naive and not having enough exposure or having enough conversations with people who know what they're talking about. But to me, art is still this thing. I'm like, I don't know what's good or bad. There's things that I like or don't like, usually on visuals or whatever my aesthetic happens to be. But like developing a taste for art seems like an entirely different thing than developing a taste for like, oh, this is a nicely designed spoon, or this is a nicely designed website, or like things that I interact with on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, I have a good example of this. I am blind to wedding dresses.
Oh, yeah.
Like, unless it's especially bad, all wedding dresses look the same to me. I cannot tell you the difference. Same thing with like women's high heel shoes. Some things are super popular that I'm like, that looks ugly to me, but like I have no idea why anyone would want to wear that, but okay, sure, fine. Meanwhile, I am like super deep into sneakers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very similar, but it's because of the exposure. I've seen a ton of sneakers, and I know what I think is cool. I know what other people think is cool. I have, and maybe this is where we can get into like style versus taste, right? Personal style.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I have the things that I like, and that doesn't mean that I have good or bad taste necessarily. Because part of the reason we got into the kitchen drawer conversation was we were talking about architecture styles. And, you know, I was talking about how I live a minimalist modern aesthetic, and some other people like a country kitchen aesthetic, or like a log cabin aesthetic. Like, that's what's beautiful to them, but it's not beautiful to me. Does that mean that they don't have taste and I do, or vice versa? Like, do we all have taste if those things are executed well?
Is taste relative or subjective?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
To personal style. Yeah. Like, just because I put glossy, shiny shit on my buttons, does that mean I have bad taste because it's not in vogue? But if I execute it correctly and well, is it still bad taste? I don't know. Does it make a good taste?
Yeah. And like, it seems like we're collectively the arbiters of taste, right? Like, you couldn't say that person has good taste without other people who have good taste agreeing that they have good taste. There has to be like some sort of consensus, right?
Zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
And it's temporal too. What is in good taste today is in bad taste tomorrow, right? Like bell bottoms.
Yeah. Well, that particular example drives me nuts. I think like modern fashion repeating the 90s and 80s is really frustrating.
Well, fashion in general is cyclical, right? Like facial hair does the same thing. Hairstyles do the same thing. They come in, they go out, they come in, they go out. And depending on where you are in time, it's either good taste or bad taste if you've got a beehive. You know what I mean?
Well, then maybe the taste part is being slightly on the leading edge of that cycle, right? Like, if you can be ahead of the mainstream, then you're considered to have better taste, or like more forward-thinking taste. I don't know.
Trendsetter.
Yeah. Okay, so I think there might be an element here where in order to have good taste, you also have to know the history of things. And like, this goes into the general theme of like having more exposure and like knowing about more things. But I'm thinking a contrived example here is, what is a good port design? Just to be technologically centered. Like, there are good ports to use and there are bad ports to use, right? USB type A is a bad port
it's
to
a bad
use.
port, yeah.
USB type C is a good port to use.
Lightning, very good.
Lightning, good. Like,
micro USB, very bad.
They have attributes that make them desirable that I don't know you would consider if there wasn't the historical artifact to compare it against. Like, USB-C might not necessarily be better if we didn't have USB type A to compare it to. Like, oh, this one's reversible, and historically it was not reversible. Therefore, this one has a more considered design or some special attribute that makes it better. I don't know if you can have taste for cables, but anyways, I'm just trying to think about the historical context here. So I feel like we just keep circling around this idea of like exposure to historical precedent, to the current zeitgeist, to whatever trajectory the current zeitgeist is headed. Like, are we on an upswing or are we on a downswing? And then acknowledging that there are multiple kinds of tastes for every kind of imaginable thing to be evaluated, right?
Yeah.
Art, fashion, software design, hairstyles.
Yeah. I remember there was a period where the aesthetic of 80s synth music was just detestable to me. I listened to it, this is like in the late 90s, early 2000s. When I listened back to music from the 80s, like, this is terrible, terrible music. How did this ever make it onto the radio? And now it's like, 15 years later, and I fucking love that aesthetic. Like, is it because everybody else likes it that I like it now? Is it the vaporwave thing that, makes me like this thing? Or is it because I actually like it myself? That's one thing I wonder about with taste is like, how much of this is me enjoying a thing because I like it, and how much of this is me being influenced by other people who have a loud voice saying they like it?
It seems like that can't be untangled, right? Like, how could you for sure say that you like a thing because you like it and not because you've seen everyone around you also likes it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so let's tie this back to software design. Like, let's say you are a young designer and you're trying to develop a better eye, more taste for what makes good interfaces. How can we map all this back onto guiding tips or principles? Like, the first thing that comes to mind for me is get exposed to more stuff. Like, go out and play with things, read old books about old software, go look at fucking Windows 98 and like do it consciously. Like, think about why things are good or bad, and like don't be so immediately distracted by the aesthetic, because I think the aesthetic's important, but like, can we look at something and understand different kinds of properties of goodness or badness? Was it usable? Was it clear? Did they use good language? Were there affordances or signifiers to do common actions? Like, that might be one way, is like actually really digging in intentionally on looking at software.
Yeah, and just because it lacks in certain areas doesn't mean it's not excelling in other areas, right? Just because it's poorly visually designed doesn't mean it's got bad usability, right?
Right. Well, so then, of course, that means you also need to be making lots of stuff. Like, have you ever noticed, Marshall, like the more you try to make things, the more you notice other things that are good?
Yeah.
This is clear for me in software, especially dealing with like animations and haptics and gestures. Like, the more I try to make good things on my own, the more it illuminates when other people have done an exceptional job of that. Like, what comes to mind for me is like things, right? Things for iOS and Mac. Like, it does certain things with animations, transitions, keyboard shortcuts. Like, there's so much stuff there that you aren't really aware of unless you've tried to make that thing before. Once you've tried to make it, you're like, hit all the edge cases, you hit all the performance limitations, you hit the API constraints, and then to see somebody actually pull it off, you're like, oh, that's good because I know all of the hurdles that they overcame to get there.
This is the magician appreciating another magician's trick, right? Especially if the effect is not astounding, right? But the method is very difficult. It's like, oh yeah, that's a cool trick if you don't know anything about it. But if you know what it took to make that happen, you have a greater appreciation for it. But unless you've gone through it, you don't know how hard it is. I've noticed this before where entire worlds open when you try to do something and realize how difficult it is, where what you thought was a small percentage of the pie explodes and becomes a bunch of different things, right? So for example, you mentioned haptics. Like, I used to think about accessibility as like a thing, right? It's like color contrast of like, make sure that I can read text or whatever. But try using your phone with voiceover on and close your eyes, right? The more you learn about that, the more you realize that's an entire fucking world that needs to be thought about and considered. And you multiply that by 10 because there are so many other aspects of accessibility that need to be taken into account, right? And it's only once you experience it and go through it and realize how much effort goes into making it done that you appreciate the magic trick.
You know what? I feel like this is a great segue into cool things because I want to talk about accessibility and one of my cool things.
I love it. Let's do it.
Let's take that accessibility line of thinking into my cool thing. I'm going to be talking about virtual reality in my cool thing this week. I'll start with a game called Beat Saber, which maybe some of you have heard of or seen videos of. It's basically like Guitar Hero in VR, except instead of strumming a plastic guitar, you are swinging virtual lightsabers to slice red and blue blocks.
Perfect description. That's great.
But there's a couple things. Okay, so let's bring it back to the accessibility. Why do you think that they're red and blue?
Because it doesn't matter what your color blindness level is, you can tell the difference between red and blue.
Yeah. And then there was another, Beat Saber has these settings that you can configure, and one of them is one-handed play. So normally you have like a red lightsaber in your left hand, a blue lightsaber in your right hand, but you have an option to just play with one arm. And my initial reaction was, oh, I bet that's just like a different mode or like a different kind of challenge. Like, oh, do I want to play this with one hand? But then the obvious answer here is this is a fucking accessibility setting. Like,
Yep.
they want people who have one arm or like, you know, some sort of handicap on one arm to still be able to play and enjoy the game.
Yeah. What do they do? Do they do like a Darth Maul thing where it's like blue on one side, red on the other?
I
On
haven't
each
tried
end?
it. That's a good question.
Okay. Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't tried it. Okay. So that's my segue into VR. So my cool thing this week is Effie busted out her Oculus Rift,
Oh.
which has been sitting in a closet for a long time, but we got bored. And she busted it out because a friend told her of a newly released game called Half-Life Alyx. Marshall, have you heard of this game?
I ordered a Valve Index because of this game, and I'm waiting to play this game until I get that VR set.
Okay.
It has special controllers. But yes, I'm very much aware, and please don't tell me too much because I'm spoiler free.
Okay. Spoiler free. This was my first time going back into VR in probably 2 or 3 years. And my mind has exploded. Like, this is the only kind of game I want to play now.
Oh, holy shit.
And I think it took a AAA title like this to really hit home. Like, the graphics, the gameplay, the consideration, you can interact with everything in the game.
Yeah.
It is buck fucking wild. And because you can interact with everything, you can be creative with how you navigate the world and solve problems. You know, we're playing on a slightly older headset. So like even with like worse graphics and not the best refresh rate, it's still incredible. The fact that after 20 minutes of playing, I immediately went on the Oculus website. I'm like, I have to upgrade my hardware. I have to like
Did
play
you get
this
new
on the best setting.
Index?
No, everything is sold out. Every single like modern VR headset is sold out. So anyways, this is my call to action for people who are interested in VR but have been putting it off. This is legit content. This was incredibly fun. So Effie and I are still working our way through the campaign. We're, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 hours in or something. We've been playing a few nights. And it is incredible. It is visceral. It is scary. It is intense. Your adrenaline pumps. And fuck, if it isn't just a ton of fun and makes me want more developers to just crank out games like this. So Half-Life Alyx, we're playing on the Oculus Rift, and we're going to upgrade our hardware as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you're getting into it. Well, also to mention, like, this is the first Half-Life game in like a decade.
Yeah, so there's like pent-up intensity anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool thing, Brian. Good suggestion. I can't wait till I get my Index.
How do you hold up with scary games?
I do not do them well. I know our friend of the show, Rafa, and co-host of Layout Podcast, he played through the entirety of Resident Evil 7 in VR, no problem. Which, if you know anything about that game and about what it's like in VR, is impossible. It's like hardcore mode. I can't imagine doing that. I would shit my pants, Brian.
Okay. I'm very excited to see how you get through Half-Life.
Yeah.
It's not that it's scary, it's just that it's visceral. Like
Everything is visceral in VR. It's crazy.
It's so intense.
Yeah. All right. Well, very cool thing. My cool thing is a little doohickey I call RoboKiller. Have you heard of this, Brian?
I think I have, yeah. Is this for spam calls?
Yeah, it's an app for your phone to reduce spam calls. It is super useful, especially during campaign times for politics, or if you have, like me, you have a number that was previously owned by someone who had lots of debt issues, and you get calls from debt collectors all the time asking for money from you, and that's not your name. Yeah.
Pretty specific there, Marshall.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I got RoboKiller. It does a bunch of things. So what's really cool is this new feature that they have. You can set it up to screen your calls. So when someone calls your number, if they're not in your contacts, it will send them to like an automated third-party thing where they ask them their name and the reason for their call. If they're legit, it will send you a transcribed version of those answers. Here's who's calling and what they're calling about before you even accept, right? So it's a way that they don't just block everybody who's not in your contact, like your address book.
Right. Because that's been my problem. Like on iOS 13, they came out with the setting to silence unknown callers in the phone app.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the problem with that is when you actually want your phone to ring, like if the delivery person's outside, or if you do one of those on hold callbacks for like some customer support line.
Instead of waiting on the line. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you forget to turn this feature off, then that call will just automatically get silenced and you lose your place in line. And it's super frustrating. Okay. So this fixes that.
I haven't had it happen yet, but so far I've gotten way fewer spam calls and stuff like my phone never rings anymore. I used to get a couple text messages and like 3 or 4 calls a day, and since installing RoboKiller, I don't get any. What's really cool is if you're a sadistic asshole, they have these pre-recorded answering people. They're like answer bots. So when someone calls you, it will pick up your phone for you and play this audio, which is like actors. So for example, there's somebody who's like cooking in a kitchen and really distracted, or someone who's like going through a tunnel and can't hear them, right? So they're having a conversation with a pre-recording, they just don't know it, and it will record that for you so you can listen back to them floundering. So
oh my God, this is amazing.
I thought this was a funny idea because I got so many bad calls. But one time, this nice lady was calling. It was a politics thing, right? She was calling for money, but like it was a nice lady, and the pre-recording was kind of confusing and it wasted her time, which is fine if it's a spam person. But this person, like, she was just like a nice lady trying to call and get money for the symphony or whatever.
Right.
And I listened to the recording and felt really bad about it. So I turned it off, and now I just have a generic answering thing. It's like, hey, this is so-and-so's phone.
Right. I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, I've re-downloaded it. I guess I downloaded it at one point, but it says it's a monthly subscription, but it's not super expensive, so probably worth it.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I forgot that it even costs money. I think it's like $2 or $3 a month, something like that. Worth it to not have my phone ring several times a day. Ugh.
Yeah, super distracting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool thing. Let's wrap up.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you thought. We're on Twitter at Design Details FM. Before you go, if you are working on a team of creative people and you need help making resource planning easier, go to float.com/design details. Float's one of our new Golden Ratio supporters, and they're going to be hanging out with us for the next few weeks. So go check them out, float.com/design details. And of course, thank you to everyone who is also supporting the show on Patreon, patreon.com/design details. Sign up today for just $1 a month. You get access to all the future bonus segments of the Sidebar on upcoming episodes. Sidebar. If you need more podcasts, go to spec.fm. That's our podcast network for designers and developers just like you. Thank you to everyone for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Bye. You know, I had this thing. My dog has figured out that when I say bye, that means that my hands are free for scritching. And so now, if I'm sitting on the couch and I end a video chat and I say bye, she'll come over and expect me to pet her because she knows that I'm no longer occupied.
Whoa. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, she's kind of smart.